On Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, we are not afraid to explore the fringes of known science, to step boldly into the darkness, and even examine the worlds of extraterrestrial civilizations. They could even be right near us.
All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Reality's Edge. Buddy, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well, Doc.
What is that reflecting off of your visor there? I see a laser beam.
That's my third eye.
Your third eye. That's fantastic.
Yes. I had a little medical thing today, and I feel great afterwards.
Yeah.
I am radiating from my third eye right now.
You're radiating great. I'm glad to see. Are you okay? Are you doing all right?
I'm doing awesome. And I want to say just one or two things really quickly. Lately people have really refreshed and renewed my faith in humanity. So much of this channel has been about helping others, and I'm so reluctant to accept help, except from very prized, very special people. And it's just because that's how I've been raised. And lately, everyone's been sending the most amazing messages. People have been so loving, from Diane to Kick to as Super always is, and everybody. And I just love our people, you know.
Yeah, we've got a great crowd here. I totally agree. And
a real family.
You can't see this, but we've got on the live show here right now, we've got Sleuth, Sunsaver, and good old Jules from the woods. Thank you. It's nice to have you guys here. I'm coming to you live from Lyman, Colorado. And we're going to do a show right now for you. Sorry, there was a little warning about this. We just had to do it on the spot here while I'm still in Lyman. It's a couple hours from Boulder. I came out here to investigate the drones. And I got to say, buddy, it has been fascinating. I've got to talk to a lot of folks about what's going on. As you can see, it's made the local headlines in all the local papers. Officials
it's a national story.
By mystery drones. The sheriff's departments have formed an interagency task force between Nebraska and Colorado sheriff's departments to try to get to the bottom of this. And it is one really deep mystery, I'll tell you that.
Not really.
Well,
I don't think so. I think, I certainly could be wrong, and I accept that possibility before I say what I'm about to say. But I did a viewing on it, and it was very vivid. And I got drones. I got drones that work together, and that they're long-range drones that can hover. You know, with the Predator, it can't hover in one spot. It can go the long range and the long distances, but it can't hover in one spot. In fact, I remember the previous summer, we were at Joshua Tree doing a UFO event, and off in the distance, Rob Freeman has this amazing camera system, and he was able to see a drone going in a circle like this, and it was obviously one of those larger Predator drones, but it couldn't stay in one spot. It had to do a circular motion in order to essentially hover and surveil one location. And they were surveilling us every night that we were there. And it was tucked down low in a valley.
But before we go into that, let me just go through the details of what's going on out here, since I've been talking to people on the ground. Yeah. So what the concern is here is there's as many as 30 in the air at the same time, spread out over eastern Colorado. They're hovering over towns, and the sheriff's departments are complaining that they're strapped for resources because they get so many calls coming in at once that they don't have the resources in their telephone switchboards. The drones will come over, and they've actually been seen every night since December 20th.
It's amazing.
Not just here in Lyman, but all up and down eastern Colorado, as far south as Carroll, which is a small town also here in Lincoln County, which is due east of Colorado Springs and Schriever. Air Force Base.
For perspective, how many miles is the furthest location that they travel?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's because it started here in eastern Colorado, and then it spread into Nebraska, western Nebraska. Now it's being seen in central Nebraska. It's off. These are seen around highways and far from highways. And again, in this little map here, they're showing every one of those blue dots is where sheriff's deputies who are, they're out at night, they see these things. That's where they've seen them. And there's been more sheriff sightings than public sightings. But the thing is, as many as 30 of these have been seen at any one time over the whole eastern Colorado area, not necessarily together. Sometimes they're seen together doing formation flying. They said it looks like a flying door in the air.
And
it makes these turns, and it just moves like a big door. And then they've mostly seen at night, some in the daytime. And again, as I pointed out in my video yesterday, these are not inexpensive drones. This has to be a big organization behind this, because these are $50,000 drones. And in my video, I pointed out that what we have is over $1 million. Actually, it's about $1.5 million at once of drone technology in the air, spread out over eastern Colorado at night. Now Nebraska, possibly Kansas. So that's sort of what's going on in terms of. And the reason I say it's a kind of a deep mystery, it is for the people down here on the ground. Maybe we can talk about your viewing of it in a moment in our theories. And believe me, there are a lot of theories. It's just that for the local people who see these things night after night, the sheriff's departments, the governor of the state of Colorado, Jared Polis, and the FAA says they have asked every federal agency, and they've been told definitely no chance. F.E. Warren was asked, F.E. Warren Air Base in Cheyenne, denied under any circumstance that they have anything to do with it.
Sure.
I did send you that article where there is some belief that there's this, I forgot the name, that strike force that's designated to protect ICBMs, which are in northeastern Colorado, but not down here, and Nebraska. But as some people are pointing out, they're not just seen around the ICBM silos. When that would make sense, maybe it's some sort of counter-drone defense or practice, but they're being seen very far south of here. So it just raises lots of questions, and that's the facts as we know it so far. If someone isn't telling us the truth, or if they are telling us the truth, then there's another agency at work here that nobody is cognizant of. So
I first heard about this story through Linda Moulton Howe, who, of course, is a legendary researcher. And so when I did a little bit of research, the only thing I'd like to add to the factual side of it is, like you were saying, they seem to be not the small, tiny drones. They seem to be larger-sized drones. And I saw a couple pictures of them, and they have lights on the end. Traffic lights, air traffic lights. I think one's red and one's green. I may be wrong. Red and blue? I can't remember exactly.
No, see, here we're getting into a very interesting issue. There's a lot of ideas being thrown around, and we don't totally know. We're heard the one type is one white light in the middle and 4 red lights on each of the x-axes. 6-foot wingspan we're talking about here. And another one sighting reported a green light, a white light, and a red light.
Well, I think it's very logical to assume that if the government had a black project, that they would not acknowledge it. I think that's a very logical thing to assume. I also think drones are on the tip of the spear in terms of a lot of this advanced technology that they need to keep secret. Drones are a big deal. They're a new technology all these different nations are using. They create a lot of vulnerabilities, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at the Predator drone and the classic rotor drone, there is a kind of a flaw. And the flaw is that the long-range drones can't hover. And the typical rotor drones are not good at doing long range. So I believe that this is a combination drone that is able to go long range and hover, and that they work in specialized teams. And that's the real beauty of drones, that one can be counter electronic warfare, another one can be air to surface anti-missile missiles, and the other one can be the attack drone. You can have all these different configurations and shapes, and no human is lost in it, and they can shoot Hellfire missiles. And here's the thing, I think they're out of Buckley Air Force Base, which is right in that area. And Buckley Air Force Base, not many people know this, has a space program that is in the public domain, but they also have a very advanced space program and stuff there that's really not in the public domain. So Buckley is a really interesting location. So I would put all of my chips, I would slide them over to a black government project.
You know,
I think if they were...
Yeah.
I think if they were commercial, we would have found out. They would come out and apologize and said, "Whoa, our bad,"
Yeah, no, this is, if you talk to locals around here, they're convinced this has to be some federal government project. And, I mean, if it was a special access program, no one would be talking about it because they wouldn't be allowed to talk about it because they've signed away their right to talk about it if it is really a SAP.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, if it is trying to be secretive, why would they use lights at all? I have to say that up in Hugo, which is ways north of here, 100 miles or so, I believe it was in Hugo, they said there was a near collision between one of these drones and their medical helicopter. So they're kind of concerned of this kind of air traffic control since these things are only a couple 100 feet high and they hover. But you see, the thing is, they're hovering over towns. And let me answer some questions here, too. Sleuth wanted to know about, there was in the news this idea, there was this interagency meeting on Monday up in Brush, which is also north of here by a good 100 miles or so.
Okay.
And I think that's about the distance. It was the FAA, sheriff's departments, and 75 law enforcement personnel.
Wow. Okay.
Now, at this meeting, they said that they wanted help from the public to look for a van, some sort of control van or closed container box on a trailer or something. Now, if you looked at the news again last night, they said it wasn't true. They aren't looking for any van all of a sudden. In fact, they're not looking for anything. And at first thought, it occurred to me maybe they know what it is now, and it's not a local control system. Like you're saying, it has to be some sort of... After all, our military drones, I think, can be controlled by satellite, right? Overseas.
Absolutely.
So they're not looking for... And they said, not only are they not looking for a van, they were never looking for a van. It was a rumor that one of the sheriff's deputies had repeated, but it wasn't true to begin with. The whole point here, buddy, I'm just trying to say is there can be so much confusion surrounding these sorts of events because we have so little ability because of the suppression of UFO information for 70 or 100 years. We don't know how to even talk about things that don't fit very easily into our ordinary categories. So they aren't looking for any van. They're not looking for any closed container cargo.
That's
trailer.
Very interesting, though.
Yeah, they're not looking for anything, and they don't want the public's help all of a sudden. So, I mean, it's
case closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think that makes it kind of definitive that it's a military project, and they just recently came and kind of behind the scenes told different people, it's okay, governor, it's okay, police, it's okay, FAA. I think they probably had to do that. But the first day that I came out speaking about this a few days ago, there was a lot of talk about it being UFOs at first. And the past few days, it has kind of been drained out of it. And I think because there's been a real specific use of words, drones. Drones was being written up in everything. So that kind of, grounds you into that thinking. But it's fascinating. It'll be interesting to find out someday what this system of drones really does.
Now, it's interesting because someone I was talking to here had some dealings with the local prison here. There's a large correctional facility in Lyman. And they do have an issue with drones of contraband being dropped into the prison,
That's
cell
funny.
phones and things like this that prisoners are not supposed to have. And so one person thought it might have something to do with counter surveillance of the prison facility. But again, this is going all up and down eastern Colorado into central Nebraska now. Now, another person pointed out to me over at one of the local bars yesterday that there are a lot of ICBM silos in Nebraska and northeastern Colorado, and there is some overlap to that too. And this is one of the first things that occurred to me when I was thinking about this about a week ago, is what does Nebraska and Colorado have to do with each other, which is Minuteman IBM silos. And they're controlled out of Warren Air Force Base. Now, Warren Air Force Base, according to what I read, has a very sophisticated counter-drone program, which they don't talk about. They say they're well aware of the potential threats, but they repeat that this isn't them doing it. That doesn't mean it couldn't be another Air Force unit operating out of Warren that isn't from Warren. There's the missile counter-drone program is run out of Louisiana, according to an article in Gazette.com, which comes out of Colorado Springs by, I think it was Roeder, the guy's last, Tyler Roeder. There's a guy who's been writing about this, and he thought he had cracked. I sent you that article. He thought he had cracked it but we really don't know. This is all speculation. Now, you've done some RV on this, Ray. And
yes, I have.
You got some? Did you get that they're flying out of Buckley, or that it's just Buckley's connected to it somewhere?
I got them flying out of Buckley, and in fact, I did some sketches. Let me see if I can find my little sketchbook really quickly. I just got back into the truck literally like 10 minutes before the call, so I'm discombobulated from the medical stuff. But I did a nice drawing. I'll just tell you about the RV first. The RV got them, they're a unique class. My gut is saying that they're a stealth kind of drone. People are not really hearing them as much as you would typically hear drones. You're not getting reports of, which is very interesting. So I think there could be a stealth kind of a rotor involved in this. And Buckley is a very fascinating location. And
now I can see Buckley driving out here last night. Yesterday afternoon. They have very large. They have a Space Command wing there, as you pointed out. They're connected to satellite reconnaissance and things like this. You can see the big radar domes, which are housed in these large circular, protective cases, covers, and from the highway. The only reason I'd question you about that, buddy, of anything coming out of Buckley like that, it is also a National Air Guard base. It is a bit close to Denver International Airport, and that brings up another issue, which I should remind you of. In the state of Colorado, you need to get a special waiver to fly drones at night. I don't know if that's an FAA rule or if that's a Colorado rule.
That's fascinating.
But you're not allowed to fly drones at night unless you have a special waiver. So whoever would be doing this, if they had, if they had the waiver, would be known to the FAA because they would have to apply to fly at night. So as people are pointing out in the chat room here, buddy, people are saying, well, if they're trying to be secretive, why would they have lights? And then so some of it doesn't now. And another thing I would have about Buckley, buddy,
I respond to that real quickly.
Yeah, and one more thing when you respond is, wouldn't people see them coming out of Buckley? I mean, they haven't been seen that far west, past Lincoln County. Yeah.
Buckley is really close, actually, I think, to where some of the sightings have been. And they kind of trace downwards from Buckley. It's almost as if Buckley's the end of the street, and all of them are east of there.
Yeah.
Southeast is correct. No sightings west of there.
Carvel was southeast of Buckley, that's true. It's also east of Schriever Air Force Base and all the Air Force bases associated with Colorado Springs. I mean, we are close to a lot of Air Force bases out here, Buckley being one of them. And that's
just one of them, yeah.
Based on Space Command. it's a really fascinating topic, and it's something obviously that has a lot of national security implications, and the Air Force obviously doesn't say very much about it because, one more thing about this article, buddy, they said they practice going against drones all the time. They have their counter drone program. So what do you
risk drones pose?
Yeah,
I mean, the fact we've seen them used for assassinations, attempted assassinations, all these different things. And of course, your first instinct is electronic countermeasures. That would be the most powerful, thing you would think about. And that's what they do now. They have jammers that jam the controllers. And but to use drones versus drones doesn't sound, a team of drones versus drones. It doesn't sound like a counter unit to me. I would think of something different as a counter unit. But I think the drones might be around 6 feet. They might be the classic kind of like stealth looking kind of a drone like this, where it has a stealth bomber shape, and it could have rotors embedded in the actual craft itself. They could have sliding doors over the rotors, or there could just be metal tilted so that it still allows the drone to make incredibly long distances. But it could also be like the Harrier jump jet with rotating, rotors that go from the front to tilting up, like the Harrier jump jet.
Yeah.
But of course, there has been seen some designs that look more triangular, with the canards up front and big reversed backwards wings in the back. You could also have rotors embedded in there. But if I had to put my money on it, it would be this one. It would be like this. Even though this is the more standard types, these two types with wings, and then you can have rotors in the actual wings, and then the other type where they tilt. Whatever it is, it's going to be interesting. And I think this brings up a lot of interesting points, basically. If we, as humans, at our level of technology, have drones, what do you think more advanced civilizations would do? Would they have drones? Would they have drone fleets? Are these 30 Tic Tacs that tumble out of the atmosphere in front of the Nimitz, are those just drones? A fleet of drones working cooperatively.
Yeah, that's one level of questions, and I'm kind of wondering, one of the issues I raised yesterday in my video is there a secret state? I mean, so secret that the conventional agencies that we're used to dealing with here, the governor's office, the FAA, sheriff's departments, don't even have access at all to this secondary state within our country. I mean, people have been suggesting this for a long time. I mentioned Dick D'Amato, the Senate staffer that worked for the Senate Intelligence Committee to try to get to the bottom of these SAPs, and he said he was totally locked out. He said he was dealing with the varsity of intelligence teams, and they wouldn't give him any access, even though he had every security clearance in the book. He was a former NSA lawyer, and he couldn't get access to these SAPs. Daniel Inouye, you remember Senator Inouye from Hawaii?
Yes. He was one of the ones who got together with with Senator Reid.
Exactly. And Ted Stevens from Alaska to form OSAP and ATIP. Right. And Inouye made that famous comment that there was another government within our government that had its own Navy and Air Force and Army, a shadow government. And so I'm not saying I have proof that this is what it is. I don't know, but it raises the question, is there another agency at work that is not accountable in any way, shape, or form to what we consider to be our government?
Well, presidents, upon leaving the office, have warned about the powers of the military-industrial state.
Yeah.
So when a president does that, you know that there's something going on here. And when you're this is a very well-known topic. The black world, the world of top-secret special access programs and the privatization of secret programs and all this stuff are designed to keep anyone, even people in the government, from knowing. You're not supposed to know. Even the government officials, people in the defense, committees, and all these things. It's designed for only a tiny handful of people to know. And a lot of these, what happens when you don't have rules and you have no supervision? I don't think these SAPs are being observed and monitored in the way they should be. there's probably a lot of extra pollution and toxins and all these dangers and all these things happening with these projects. But I think, another notion, I was talking about this with a friend today, is when the Library of Alexandria burnt, it was a tremendous loss of intellect and information and data for a culture that prized information and data. They would buy books, take them from any ship that came into the harbor, and then reprint them and give them back copies of people. They really prized data. What if a small group of people, after the Library of Alexandria, said, you know what, we can never let this happen again. We must prize data and knowledge and information above everything else. Let's form a secret sect and advance science and culture. And we can do it from within the society, but we have to be a secret. And there could be that kind of a society. The interesting thing is that's Hal Puthoff's favorite ET explanation. According to Eric Davis, he believes that there is a more ancient version of humans that broke away and have been secret, maybe even living amongst us.
Yeah.
And that's very logical. It's very grounded. It's very earthly. This is such a freaking awesome topic that leads to all the coolest stuff, the very fabric of reality, whether we're alone in the universe, the most high-end physics.
Yeah.
This is freaking cool, and we are blessed to be here. And I think I just hurt my tummy by being too excited.
Sorry. No, well said, buddy. Well said. It's fascinating, and that's what I love about this topic. You've done some RV about that. Well, we'll see in time, perhaps more what exactly this is, but it raises a lot of great questions. And the questions are about transparency, about unknown things. And it does appear that federal and local agencies say they're completely stymied. I mean, they have asked every possible company out here that could use drones. That includes Google, which is experimenting with package delivery, Amazon. There's, by the way, surrounding Lyman are tons of wind turbines. And at night they flash. I was out last night doing my own little sky watch looking for some of these drones because some people said, they come over, they circle around and they go back south again. People, lots of people seen them, or they know people who've seen them. They have people who've had taking pictures of them. It's not very good pictures, obviously. It's at night. It's dark. But the interesting thing about it is, no one is admitting to having anything to do with this. Not even, utility companies use drones, but they're not going to be out there night after night. So,
I think a drone is a very logical accessory to any craft. They have Air Force jets now that have these pods that open up and drop out like 7 or 8 drones. And these drones follow and do different missions, and they can be independent and all that stuff. And when you look at UFO case history, and we've talked about the fractal structure of UFOs, how they go from sizes to having smaller ships inside of them, and even at a very small projection, one mothership could have, I think it was like 267 different craft inside of it. But if you had, every ship had 2 drones, that seems very reasonable to me. In the Belgium sightings, there were oftentimes a red ball of light and a blue ball of light that would leave the triangles and go zipping around and doing stuff. UFO history is full of larger craft sending out drones. Rendlesham, I mean, we can go on and on and on. So I think drones and having a little mini buddy is just a natural part of the future process.
Okay, and let me go back to Carroll Bohlander, General Carroll Bohlander with the Bohlander memo. At the closing of Project Blue Book, the Air Force issued a statement.
Mm-hmm.
And if we remember what that statement was from the Bohlander memo, which is what Hal Puthoff mentioned at the get-go of his speech to IRVA SSE a year and a half ago in Vegas, the Bohlander memo said that any UFO sightings that had national security implications did not go through usual channels. It went through JANA 146, or Air Force Manual 55, Regulation 5511, which is, classified channels of communication. So, given that Hal thought it was so relevant to bring up the Bohlander memo from 1971 is still relevant, and he would know, do you think that there's other channels of communication here, the ones that you're alluding to, where they say we don't have to tell sheriff's departments, as bad as that can be for the local population? We don't have to tell the sheriff's, we don't have to tell the FAA, we don't have to tell the governor. I mean, I'm thinking that's a possible scenario here.
That's exactly what's happening. I think it's a black project that they know they can do that stuff. But the one thing they decided not to do, there's different lines they have to censor themselves. They decided to use running lights because of the danger they could pose to other craft and things like that. So they made an executive decision, we're going to have to do the running lights so we don't cause a danger. That could be a whole new level of stuff. The people are going to ask what the heck's going on, but at least we were safer. And so I think they made that executive call on that. They would have probably preferred to be dark and do these operations at night. Because I believe in combat they wouldn't have those lights on. But I think that's another thing that's indicative of this being a special access program.
Do you, now do you think that the subject matter itself that the drones are dealing with is classified, and that's one reason why they can say, in the same way that the Navy is now saying they have another Tic Tac video? Did you see this article a couple days ago? They released the Navy released another statement a couple days ago through their spokesman, Susan Goff. Her last name Goff or something, G-O.
Is it the East Coast Tic Tac?
No, this was the Nimitz, and they said they have another video which they are not going to share for national security reasons. Now, people said maybe it's because the actual sensors themselves are classified, and they don't want to show how accurate the sensors are. But they do have another video of the Tic Tac that hasn't been released. Now, do you think it's possible, buddy, that the mission of these drones is some classified project, even perhaps observing UFOs, or who knows what they're observing, and that's a reason why they wouldn't be telling anyone about it, because it is something to do with so out of control of our typical government structure, extraterrestrials, UFOs, things like we like to talk about in this topic, that the ramifications to admit what they're studying would just be unacceptable, so they can get away with not talking about what they're doing. Because again, we're talking about $1.5 million of drones up there a night sometimes. It's a lot of drone technology. It's not something that Buddy and I can just throw up there. These aren't these little drones that cost a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s. These are the big expensive ones. Yeah.
Just like these drones that are being seen in Colorado, that are being run secretly by the military, the Air Force most likely. The Tic Tacs that were seen, remember, they were seen in the SoCal war game area.
Right.
So the Tic Tacs were in that SoCal war gaming area. And now remember, stealth bombers and stealth fighters that look so freaking badass. If you look at a stealth bomber straight on, or a fighter straight on, they look like they're from the freaking future for sure. Yeah. They were built in the 80s and the 90s. Imagine 40 years later what we have. We know there's anti-gravity. I'll tell you for certain there's anti-gravity. The government has anti-gravity. And it's a type that they can make. And I don't rule out the possibility that the Tic Tacs could be a governmental project. But I also know that there is another footage from the Nimitz incident of a saucer that's really close up, too. That's never going to be released also. And it shows the dome above. And what I'm thinking about that Tic Tac may be the L's that are underneath.
Yes. What are those?
Talk about the L's?
Yeah, please talk about the L's. What are the L's?
They were... It came out... I wrote about it before I heard about it anywhere. You can go back on my channel and look and see I'm telling the truth. It talked about these little appendages on the bottom.
Yeah.
And they're shaped like little L's. And Lieutenant Commander Fravor noticed them and spoke about them first.
Yep.
And aside from the perfect Tic Tac shape and a tiny little seam that seems to be running down the craft, there's also the only other discriminating feature are these L-shaped things. What could they be for? I was thinking, I had several thoughts. Remember, this Tic Tac was the one hovering over a saucer that was just under the surface of the water.
Do you know that it was a saucer under the water?
Yes.
Did someone tell you this, buddy? Because the rest of us told it was a seamount.
Was a what? A seamount. Oh, that's right. It was hovering over a saucer.
Okay.
Now, if the Tic Tac had data to transfer to the saucer, it could probably do it electronically some way. Why would they need to physically transfer something? They were so close, remember? They were almost touching.
Yeah. It's a part of the mystery. What was that about?
I don't think it's a mystery. I think the L shapes might be how they transfer physical items from one ship from a smaller scout ship to the larger, saucer to be stored up to go down to the storage area until they build up enough of these samples to go off planet with it to the larger storage. So they're not going to take each one and go to space with every single sample. The Tic Tacs are going to go on their missions, get their things that they're supposed to get, come back to the saucers, load it up, and then so the saucer is filled with more. So I think the L shapes, it's logical to assume they could have something to do with the transfer, but it also could be part of the propulsion system.
Okay, someone wanted to know, we got a question from Laird Agha here. She wants to know, what are the L's? What are we talking about? We're talking about those little appendages on the Tic Tacs. They've been seeing, the pilots who got eye contact visual saw these little L-shaped object. Now, there was speculation they could be X-band antennas, ultra-high frequency radio wave antennas. Some people thought they could be landing skids. And you're suggesting there's some sort of electronic transfer mechanism. That's interesting.
Not electronic, I think physical.
Physical
I think that they're physically transferring items, data, DNA samples, creatures maybe samples. So a Tic Tac was roughly shaped like that, and he said that they were things shaped like this.
Oh, hold it up a little farther. Yeah.
Like little legs.
Yeah. Okay.
Ow. Ouch.
Well,
so, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
We're so lucky.
We are lucky, and I just think, again, you might be right with your Buckley viewing. I don't know. I always like to see feedback for a viewing session, but some of these most recent articles do seem to be going in the direction that your viewing suggests. And again, I think just the whole issue raises a lot of interesting, questions about how do we analyze anomalous phenomena. And I just want to note how long it's taking for these agencies to physically get together, have a meeting with 75 people. People think that this stuff can be like instantaneous. They're going to figure out what it is. It takes people whiles to get together, have a meeting, communicate, and we're dealing with unknowns here, right? Just like the UFO phenomena. How do we even, we can talk about the colors of the lights. What are the knowns? We can talk about the directionality. They've been seen often going east to west, but the people I talked to last night at the local bar have seen them going north-south. Maybe that never made it, So it's buddy, what it is a question of how do we communicate with each other in this society, and how do we separate out signal from noise, just like an RV?
Yes,
what is actual information and what's noise? Yeah.
And how do we become discriminating researchers and investigators? Not grab onto the first thing and say, that's definitely it. I'm throwing this out there as a conjecture from the, viewings. I think that it may not be far off, but I'm not saying that's for sure it. I'm saying it is a mystery right now. I think if I had to put all my chips on something, I would put all my chips on that idea. But I still would like to keep the whole door open to all the possibilities. Because like you say, we don't know for certain. And the search is fantastic. It takes us all these places, from advanced civilizations having drones of their own to us. I would like to have 2 drones in my car that could go ahead and check out traffic in one location and see if there's parking in another and all these different things. I would like that.
Well, I'll tell you, obviously, if we each had our own drone over our car, it could give us a bigger view of the highway and parking spots. What the FAA is saying about this is they've been pushing for an ID program for drones, some sort of something related to a transponder, like in a plane. And they're saying, here's my wag the dog theory, is that, I'm not saying this is right, but I thought, they've been wanting more regulations about drones. So if you created an incident where it caused havoc, you could justify legislation they want registration of all drones above a certain weight. They want to be able to identify. So nobody, believe it or not, when a drone is out there, you can't identify it. You are not allowed to shoot them down because that's technically interference with an aircraft, which is a federal offense. And you can't do any spoofing, radio spoofing, which would trick them into landing and things. Remember Iran did that to one of our drones here in the U.S. during the Obama administration. They tricked it into landing at one of their air bases. You're not allowed to. The sheriff's department said they're not even allowed to do that to drones unless there's a real reason. And they don't feel that these drones have been acting in a malicious way, even though the locals say they get a creepy feeling from it. They're loud, by the way. They're as loud as lawnmowers. They sound like a small aircraft.
So they are really loud.
Very loud.
I hadn't heard any sounds. I hadn't heard any reports of sounds.
No, they're like a lawnmower.
That's so funny. So they're not stealth drones.
No, they are not stealth. and that's it was an interesting idea. These are as loud as a small aircraft, like a Cessna, and maybe smaller than that. But I heard lawnmower sound, small aircraft volume. So they're audible too, and that it's just they're out there for, as I said here in Lyman, one hovered over the town a couple days ago for 90 minutes. 90 minutes is a long time.
That's a lot of fuel.
It's a lot of fuel for a little drone. I've been around drone pilots in the crop circles, and they can't keep them out for an hour and a half. And I was doing some research on these drones. They can stay aloft for hours, these larger ones, and so but again, it has to do with how little, again, people assume that there's some sort of overarching control, that we know everything at any moment because we're in the electronic age. And this just shows it started on December 20th. And weeks can go by, and the top officials, if they're telling us the truth, say we just have no clue. We don't have any information. Zero.
This is a wonderful topic, and I love how it's in a way timeless. Because these advanced civilizations seem to have drones also. When Victor Vigiani out of Canada got the incredible NORAD documents from the Freedom of Information Act, where they had intercepted tracks of interest, and what was the other type of tracks? I'm forgetting, but they actually intercepted stuff coming in to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And they would capture, like the Nimitz incident, 30, 40 things tumbling from space. They come in oftentimes through the Arctic, and then travel at high altitudes quickly to their location, and then come more towards the ground or whatever the ocean. But there's been certain flight routes that have been, kind of seen. It kills me. Because every single government, Doc, is trying to weaponize this technology. They all have bits and pieces. India has crashes, China has crashes, Russia has crashes, we have crashes, and everyone is trying to weaponize this. Trump is even bragging out about our hypersonic missiles that we have. Hypersonic!
Oh, now we have them too. Okay.
And you know what? As I've been saying a lot lately, the most powerful thing from these craft is not the weaponization of them. Look at the Fermi paradox. Maybe this is why super advanced civilizations don't exist, because they make the wrong choice right now. And I think the biggest, most incredible power that these craft have is the power to let us all know, physically, beyond a shadow of a doubt, physically, that we are not alone in the universe. They're physical proof. Videos don't do that. Nimitz videos don't do that. Radar doesn't do that. But the craft, or a big hunk of nanomaterial, says this is from an advanced civilization. That's mega proof. And the governments need to some government has to be gutsy enough to pull this stuff out and inspire the future and save the future, I think.
Okay, you're giving me another idea, bud. You remember the Broken Arrow scenario where you lose a nuclear weapon
Yes.
from a plane, or you're missing something that's really important. Is it possible that something came down in this area and they're looking for it? That they had a fast walker, that NORAD says we got a fast walker. It came down in eastern Colorado. It went below the radar at 5 miles, a couple miles up. We don't know where it is. It could be anywhere in the eastern Colorado, and someone is looking for it, and instead of just sending out guys in Jeeps, they're using drones.
Well, this is fascinating. We know there's at least 2 rapid response teams in the United States, and they're supposed to be placed globally, to pick up stuff from space. There are already teams, real rapid response teams. What if this is a new rapid response team that's utilizing drones to scan the ground, like you're saying? That would be a really cool thing to have. They could be looking for infrared traces of something that was hot enough to come to the atmosphere.
Biological entities?
Bum, bum, bum.
Okay, buddy, we're going to have to leave it here. I have to, I am in a motel here.
You're in Lyman.
Yes, and I have to check out. So we're going to have to cut the show short right now. But I just want to say, everyone, thanks as usual for these great questions. I've been reading all your comments here. And, buddy, well, let's do a follow-up in a couple days about this.
Let's definitely do so. I want to thank everyone for their prayers. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for everything. I love you guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you watching. Thanks a lot, buddy. And we'll see you next time on Reality's Edge, okay? Take care.
This Valentine's Day on Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, we are going to have a little surprise for you. You'll see.
On Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, we are not afraid to explore the fringes of known science, to step boldly into the darkness, and even examine the worlds of extraterrestrial civilizations.
I gotta get funny again. I wasn't funny today.